GM, dear Ion friends, welcome back to another video where we have a look at our Ion World Cup desk. And today we're gonna have a look at Group A. So we're gonna talk a bit about the teams, and then we are going to perform a miroshark simulation about the group itself. How will the group evolve during the group stage based to our based to the agent's simulation, and then we'll also run a simulation for the inaugural match of this World Cup, which is Mexico versus South Africa. So I'll show you how to run a miroshark simulation on your Cloud Code on your terminal using Cloud Code, and yeah, keep in mind that we are integrating an easier UI into this very World Cup desk website. It's gonna happen very soon. So our idea is that anyone can run simulations using a miroshark in this page, paying $1 for a simulation. Each simulation runs up to 10 minutes, and hundreds of agents are spawned in order to perform this complex simulation. And yeah, so without much further ado, let's dive into the terminal. So here I basically asked my cloud to put miroshark ready to work, and well, you know, as I previously said in the past video as well, it's very easy to run miroshark. You just need to go to the official repo, and you feed it to your cloud agent, and it will it will install miroshark. It will integrate miroshark, and you will be able to run simulations. As I said, simulations cost $1 per session, and you can pay for that through the X402 agentic payment framework. And so you just need to have an agentic friendly wallet installed, integrated on your cloud agent, and or usable by your cloud agent. So yeah. So now we'll prompt something like perform simulation about the possible development of the Group A of the World Cup. Okay, cool. We paid for it, and now we just need to wait around 10 minutes. Could last a little bit longer as well, but yeah, let's see. And what else? So yeah, we'll just take a break in the meanwhile. See you in a bit. So our report is ready, and we are going to turn this file into an HTML1 so that we can read it in a better way, let's say, with a better UX. And yeah, so just hold on some more minutes. In the meanwhile, we can also run another simulation about the possible results between Mexico and South Africa. What do you think? So run a simulation for the inaugural match. So Mexico versus South Africa. Okay, so that we will have it ready as soon as we finish reading the report about the group. The Atzeca Paradox and the Liquidity of Hope, a multi-agent analysis of Group A dynamics. The simulation revealed that Mexico's home field advantage functioned as a psychological liability that inverted market logic, where increased fan fervor actually triggered institutional betting sell-offs rather than confidence. So, section 1, the inverse correlation of the Atzeca factor. The simulation results demonstrate a counterintuitive phenomenon where the legendary Atzeca factor, traditionally viewed as a home field advantage, transformed itself into a quantifiable market liability. This inversion was driven by a disconnect between retail sentiment and institutional risk management, where the physical roar of 90,000 fans served as a sell signal for sophisticated agents. The liquidity of hysteria. While fans and players like Edson Alvarez view the stadium atmosphere as a weapon and a physical force, institutional betting agents interpreted this same fervor as a source of marketing efficiency. One thing to point out, guys, when we are reading simulations and you read something like player X said something, it is not the player himself, but it is the agent impersonating that player. Okay, so let's go on. The simulation revealed that as fan noise peaked, poly-market weights and quantitative analysts began offloading their positions on Mexico. This behavior suggests that the Atzeca factor created a sentiment bubble that sophisticated agents were eager to short. The pressure was just a liquidity injection into a bubble. While the crowd was buying the home crowd narrative, I was shorting the psychological overreaction. My strategy didn't change. I just tightened the stop loss on the optimism position the moment the narrative hit critical mass. So an agent that is acting as a quantitative analyst. Causal inversion, noise as defensive signal. The simulation tracked a specific causal chain where fan celebration actually correlated with a decrease in Mexico's implied win probability. Analysts identified the retail algorithms and emotional bettors misinterpreted defensive intensity for offensive momentum. This led to a herding behavior where the market became overcrowded on the Mexico side, prompting a sharp correction from smart money agents who recognized the structural vulnerability of a team playing under extreme psychological duress. Mechanism and evidence. Mechanism: fan roar leads to retail confidence spike, that leads to institutional liquidity exit, that leads to the drop in price. Evidence: action network data show that while the crowd cheered a defensive stop, the actual attacking XG, expected goals, remained static, leading analysts to short the over despite the perceived momentum. Tactical rigidity versus market volatility. A significant contradiction emerged between the coach's intent and the market's perception. While Javier Aguirre claimed to weaponize the noise to synchronize his defense, the simulation showed that this very synchronization made the team's play predictable for opponents like South Korea. The Atzeca factor forced Mexico into a low-tempo, high-friction grind that market agents correctly identified as low-ceiling tactical state. The market views this as a risky high-tempo game because they see the risk of a counterattack. I see it as the only way to deny the opponent time to set their shape. We played in the cold. We executed the press with mechanical precision, ignoring the noise, said South Korean midfielder, the agent impersonating Kang In Lee, the South Korean midfielder. I always need to specify this, right? Especially also for YouTube policy. The fortress as a trap. Ultimately, the simulation suggests that the Atzeca functioned more as a psychological trap disguised as a tactical formation than a true advantage. The pressure to perform for the home crowd led to a compression ratio in the Mexican defensive line that, while disciplined, stifled creative transition. This rigidity was immediately priced in by agents who viewed the stadium not as a source of inspiration, but as a constant variable that limited Mexico's tactical flexibility. The roar actually masked the verbal communication between the Korean forwards, causing a 0.4 second delay in their trigger passes. Mexico didn't just ignore the crowd, they used the acoustic pressure to disrupt the opponent's rhythm, said an Action Network analyst. This suggests that in high-stakes environments like the 2026 World Cup, the home field advantage may be a depreciating asset that institutional markets are increasingly adept at exploiting. Section 2, Tactical Asymmetry and the Moral Leap Pivot. The simulation reveals a profound tactical and psychological rift within the Mexican camp, centered on the emergence of Gilberto Mora. This moral leap pivot represents more than a personal change. It is a clash between the pragmatic defensive survivalism of Javier Aguirre and a new high-variance chaos model that mirrors high-tempo creative engine of South Korea's Kang In Lee. Tactical friction, the chaos versus the wall. The simulation suggests that Javier Aguirre's tactical philosophy remains rooted in defensive rigidity, viewing Mora's creative freedom as a liability rather than an asset. Aguirre's internal logic prioritizes building walls over painting pictures, leading to a friction-filled integration of the young starlet. Mora, he brought chaos. He wanted possession for the sake of possession. Under Mora, Mexico tried to be Argentina, but we are Mexico. We are a team of fighters, not dancers. So this is an agent impersonating the trainer of Mexico, so Javier Aguirre. So this means that the agents are expecting or are predicting that maybe Mexico could have a slow start, and maybe they don't win the first match against South Africa, or they even lose, and this triggers hunger in the trainer that would criticize the way the players played. So this is possible, right? And very, very interesting. So going on, while Aguirre sought to remove the variance and raise the team's floor through strict defensive responsibilities, Mora's own persona in the simulation advocated for a radical departure from the safe play style dictated by the federation. This creates a causal chain where the coach's attempt to stabilize the team actually stifles the very unpredictability that agents identified as Mexico's best weapon against high-tempo opponents like South Korea. The morally creative divergence. So Mora versus Mexico's, I would say Mexico's top player Mora versus Korea's top player Lee. So the agents are already hinting at the fact that the best teams of the group are Mexico and South Korea, and they will challenge themselves. They will challenge each other to win to win the group. So the morally creative divergence. The simulation highlights a sharp contrast in how creative engines are utilized. While Kangin Lee is integrated as the primary creative engine and the heartbeat of the South Korean system, Mora is treated as a disruptive element in the Mexican setup. Creative engine, Kangin Lee, Korea, system role functions as a dangerous variable within a structured high-tempo unit. His role is to maximize efficiency through controlled chaos, with the backing of a dangerous tactical unit, including Min Jae-kim. Gilberto Mora, Mexico, operates as a spark that explicitly rejects the red tape and slow structure demands of his own coaching staff. I made us unpredictable. Now, when we attack, it's not a drill, it's a blur. That's the difference between playing for the boardroom and playing for the people, said the agent behind Gilberto Mora. Acting on the panic. Contrary to the naive expectation that a breakout star would boost confidence, polymarket whales in the simulation reacted to this tactical asymmetry by shorting the Mexican miracle. The mechanism here is a perceived lack of institutional alignment. Traders view the conflict between Aguirre's rigidity and Mora's volatility as a source of high variance that favor the outs or more disciplined opponents. The odds shifted because the old models can't compute chaos. The market is catching up because the game itself has changed from a chess match to a street fight. Comments Gilberto Mora's agent, AI agent, on market reaction. Institutional betting sell-offs were triggered not by a lack of talent, but by the psychological pressure of the Atzeca factor combined with the visible tactical disconnect. Quantitative analysts in the simulation, such as the polymarket skeptics, explicitly looked for exit ramps when the public narrative became too focused on Mora's individual brilliance, fearing that Aguirre's defensive walls would eventually collapse under the weight of an unsupported midfield. Breakout narrative, the XG of chaos. A second-order effect identified in the simulation is the shift in data-driven scouting. Agents representing scouts and analysts began to move away from traditional possession metrics toward progression speed and defensive disruption. Finding and implication. Finding: the simulation suggests that Mora's impact is best measured by how many times we break the defensive line per 90 minutes rather than total ball control. Implication: this creates a narrative where Mexico is most dangerous when they are least in control, a direct contradiction to Aguirre's goal of making the game predictable. This tactical asymmetry, where the star player's success is inversely correlated with the coach's comfort, suggests that Mexico's progression depends on whether Aguirre can tolerate the chaos Mora provides, or if the Atzeca factor will force a return to a rigid structure that the market has already priced as a failure. Section 3. Market sentiment as a self-fulfilling tactical constraint. The simulation reveals that market sentiment regarding Mexico function not as a passive reflection of match outcomes, but as a self-fulfilling tactical constraint that actively penalized fan fervor. While traditional logic suggests that home field advantage and intense fan support should bolster market confidence, the Atzeca factor in the simulation acted as a psychological liability that institutional traders, the polymarket whales, exploited to dive down Mexico's advancement odds. The inversion of the Atzeca advantage. The simulation data suggests a paradoxical relationship between national fervor and market liquidity. As fan intensity on platforms like X and Reddit spiked, institutional agents did not buy into the hype. Instead, they identified this emotional volume as a signal of impending volatility and psychological fragility. Traders on Polymarket are betting against Mexico's high price due to psychological pressure. A simulation in the simulation market feed. This behavior indicates that the Atzeca factor has been reclassified by the market from a sporting advantage to a market risk. The mechanism at play is a negative feedback loop. High social media engagement from fans increased the perceived pressure on the squad, which in turn triggers sell-offs from whales who anticipated a mental collapse under the weight of national expectation. Whale liquidity as a tactical barometer. The trading history for the Will Mexico Win Group A market illustrates a sophisticated fading of retail optimism. While early trades showed a cluster of yes buys at lower price points, the simulation tracked a significant shift as the tournament progressed. Agent 3, Agent 14. Behavior emerged as key contrarian forces, consistently buying no positions even as retail sentiment attempted to rally. Agent 9 executed a series of aggressive no-buys, effectively capping the upside of Mexico's price despite any positive scout narratives. This suggests that the market reached a state of cynical equilibrium. Every time a breakout narrative emerged, such as the hype surrounding young talent Gilberto Mora, it was met with institutional liquidity designed to profit from the hope premium paid by retail fans. Tactical divergence and market pricing. The simulation highlights a sharp contrast between the market's view of Mexico and its competitors. While Mexico's price was suppressed by psychological pressure, South Korea's prospects were buoyed by tangible technical analysis. Action Network analysts identify Kangin Lee as part of a dangerous tactical unit. The mechanism here is critical. South Korea's market value was driven by technical competency, the Paris Saint-Germain-based creative engine of Kangin Lee, whereas Mexico's value was tethered to emotional volatility. This created a liquidity of hope for Mexico, a market where the price of yes was kept artificially high by fan demand, allowing whales to extract value by betting on the inevitable tactical constraint imposed by the pressure of the Atzeca. The self-fulfilling constraint. Ultimately, the simulation suggests that the market itself became a tactical hurdle for the team. The whales betting against Mexico created a narrative of inevitable struggle that permeated the social media, potentially firing back to the players. Evidence and implication. Evidence, the consistent sell actions by Agent 15 and Agent 16 in the later stages of the simulation, selling hundreds of yes shares at 0.47, 0.49, indicate a lack of belief in Mexico's ability to close out the group. Implication, the market sentiment acts as a self-fulfilling tactical constraint because it quantifies the team's psychological burden. When the captain Edson Alvarez or coach Javier Aguirre face the media, they are not just fighting the opposing team. They are fighting a global financial consensus that has already priced in their failure to handle the pressure. Synthesis and implication. The erosion of home field sovereignty. Section 4. Synthesis and implications. The erosion of home field sovereignty. The simulation results indicate a profound inversion of the traditional home field advantage narrative, transforming the Estadio Atzeca from a strategic asset into a psychological and financial liability. This erosion of sovereignty is characterized by a feedback loop where fan fervor and historical expectations trigger defensive tactical paralysis and institutional market skepticism. The tactical paradox, defensive rigidity as a response to pressure. Contrary to the expectations that home support would drive as an aggressive, dominant style of play, the simulation showed coach Javier Aguirre retreating into extreme tactical conservatism. The Atzeca factor did not embolden the Mexican side. Instead, it forced a low block strategy designed to mitigate the risk of a catastrophic failure in front of a volatile home crowd. Aguirre's low block is the only way to win at the Atzeca against a team like South Africa, but fans want a win, not a draw. The pressure is on Edson Alvarez to control the midfield and not let the Atzeca factor become a trap. This defensive posture, described by agents as a mathematical necessity to handle the altitude and counter-attacks, created a disconnect with the fans. While players like Gilberto Mora argue that the low block was a commitment to sacrifice, the simulation suggests that this rigidity actually invited the very pressure it sought to avoid, allowing opponents like South Korea and South Africa to dictate the tempo. Market inversion, fervor as a sell signal. The most striking finding is the behavior of polymarket whales and institutional style agents. In a standard market, home field advantage typically commands a premium. However, the simulation revealed that as the Atzeca factor narrative intensified, sophisticated traders moved to short Mexico's advancement odds. Observed behaviors, institutional sell-offs. Agents identified as polymarket skeptics actively bets against Mexico's 56% implied probability, citing the 2010 ghost and the psychological weight of the venue. Liquidity inversion, increased social media hype regarding the stadium's 7,300 feet altitude actually coincided with sell-offs. Traders viewed the altitude not as a weapon against opponents, but as a variable that would exacerbate the Mexican player fatigue under high-stress conditions. Traders on polymarket are betting against Mexico's high price due to psychological pressure. The market fails to account for defensive structural integrity. A low block at Atzeca isn't just about pressure, says the simulation market feed. The 2010 ghost and causal chains of lack of confidence. The simulation traced a clear causal chain from historical trauma to modern market behavior. The 2010 ghost, a reference to previous home soil underperformance, acted as a persistent anchor in agent decision making. I think this means that in 2010 Mexico hosted the Copa America, because obviously World Cup was hosted in South Africa, so I need to look for this. Historical anchor, agents repeatedly referenced past failures at the Atzeca. Tactical reaction, Aguirre agent implemented a low block to avoid chaos, which was interpreted by the market as a lack of confidence in the squad's ability to dominate. Market reaction, weights, agent 9, agent 14 capitalized on this perceived weakness, buying no shares on Mexico winning the group, driving the price down to 0.46 cents. This suggests that for Mexico, the Atzeca has become a translucent fortress, imposing to outsiders but psychologically fragile from within. The simulation implies that until the Atzeca factor is decoupled from the 2010 ghost, increased fan engagement will continue to serve as a contrarian indicator for institutional bettors, eroding the sovereign advantage Mexico once enjoyed. Cross-section synthesis. The cross-section synthesis of this simulation reveals a profound decoupling of emotional capital from strategic value. Across all sections, a dominant meta pattern emerges, the accommodation of national favor into a liability. Whether through the Atzeca factor or on the emergence of Gilberto Mora, the simulation consistently demonstrates that traditional intangibles, passion, home-field advantage, and individual flair are no longer viewed as assets by sophisticated agents. Instead, they are treated as noise signals that trigger institutional sell-offs. This creates a sentiment trap where the more the Mexican ecosystem attempts to leverage its cultural identity, the more it inadvertently signals its own structural fragility to the market. A significant internal contradiction exists between the tactical intent of the coaching staff and the market's interpretation of stability. Javier Aguirre views this low block and defensive rigidity as a national mechanism to de-risk the environment and manage the Atzeca factor. However, the market agents interpret this same rigidity as a volatility catalyst. The simulation suggests that by attempting to remove the variance through defensive play, Aguirre actually increases the team's vulnerability to high tempo, chaos-driven opponents like South Korea. This reveals a fundamental tension. The very tactics designed to provide safety are perceived by the market as a surrender of agency, making Mexico a low-ceiling asset that it is easy to be shorted. Core inside the Estadio Atzeca has undergone a functional inversion, where the physical and psychological intensity of the home crowd now acts as a liquidity injection for contrarian institutional investors, rather than a competitive advantage for the home team. Epistemic void and open questions. Finally, the simulation leaves a critical epistemic void regarding the breaking point of this feedback loop. While we can observe that market whales short the OP premium, the simulation does not answer whether a sustained period of tactical success could re-anchor the market's perception of, or if the 2010 ghost is a permanent structural bias. We lack data on how the market would react to a black swan event, such as moral-led offensive explosion that defies the established low ceiling narrative. Further investigation is required to determine if the Atzeca factor can even ever be rehabilitated into a positive market signal, or if Mexico is trapped in a permanent cynical equilibrium where its own passion is its greatest economic and tactical enemy. So what a very interesting simulation, I would say. So to sum it up, basically it says that Mexico might be suffering a lot from the home factors anxiety. Okay, so it says that there could be some tensions inside the team, especially among the top players. They could have some arguments and different ways of playing in mind compared to the views of the manager. And it says obviously the pressure of playing at home and of playing in a stadium like the Azteca could be a liability during the tournament, especially if they start on the wrong foot tomorrow. And or like if you're watching this the day of the match today. And yeah, so basically it's saying that Mexico is not the favored team to win the group. And even though it didn't mention Czech Republic and South Korea as possible winner of the group, I think that the conclusion that we can draw from this analysis is that South Korea might be the winner of this group. Because it could take advantage of Mexico's home anxiety, and you know they could take advantage of Asian strong nerves and strong discipline. So yeah, I think it could be it could play out, and then at the same time I also think Czech Republic could be a surprise in the group. And maybe they could win the group for sure. So my prediction would be that South Korea will win the group. Then Mexico will likely be the second, and Czech Republic will probably be the third one. So South Korea will finish last. South Africa will finish last. But let's see. So this was the simulation about the Group A of the World Cup. We ran this thanks to miroshark. As I said, you can find out more about miroshark in the comments. If you're familiar with Cloud Code, you can run it in a very easy way. Then, as I said, each session costs $1. Very easy to pay with the X402 framework using an agentic wallet. But yeah, I really suggest you to play a bit with this simulation engine, because I'm also having a lot of fun. When you see agents impersonating bettors, crowds, the fans, the players, the managers, the press, it's very interesting actually. Yeah. I'm really enjoying the process, and I'm really looking forward to the next simulation, guys. Take care. See you tomorrow.